It's always with great sadness that you have to announce so early on in a brand new year that you've lost someone that you've truly admired, spent a lot of time with, and really they had such a rich tapestry of wonderful show business stories, of which thankfully I'm now able to share with you. Simply because, as I often think, and I'm sure you may agree with me, but sadly, a lot of these stories get lost along the way because when major stars normally sit down and do an autobiography or a memoir or whatever, they tend to leave out the most juicy things because in their mind they simply don't want to offend people, or the other side of it is they've simply forgotten. This wasn't the case when I sat down with the sadly now lost brilliant musician, composer, arranger, director, he did everything, Laurie Holloway. Now, Laurie was one of these people that, he was an Oldham boy and literally had done so many things in his career, culminating with working with some of the biggest stars on the planet. But for many people, you will know him as the first original musical director for the British version of Strictly Come Dancing. Prior to that, he was also the musical director for Michael Parkinson's show, of which he then left Strictly to go back and rejoin. As he said, every major star walked down those stairs in the golden days of the early BBC TV stuff, and he couldn't quite believe he was playing the piano for the likes of Fred Astaire or Lauren Bacall. Such, of course, was his sort of, a bit like me, fascinated by it. As he said, I'd gone to see all of these movie stars at my local picture house, and suddenly, there they are standing in front of you saying, what key would you like this in? Fabulous, isn't it? But it was this particular royal story that I wanted to share with you simply because it's now something of a mystery. It was a mystery when we sat down and chatted about it, but it's gone even further now, so let me explain. Hi, nice to see you. Thank you so much. Are you all right on this it's currently sun-drenched moment here in London town? It's always nice to have a bit of free vitamin D, isn't it, at this point of the year? Absolutely. As I say, a sad story really, losing someone who was, it was just a privilege to sit with them. This sort of thing. You realise they've done so much, they're not ego-led, and, literally, he was just multi-talented. He was also married to the wonderful singer Marion Montgomery as well, a wonderful jazz singer who could literally sing everything, Wonderful lady too, thrilled to meet her. But this story concerns our late brilliant monarch, Queen Elizabeth, and her sister, Princess Margaret, alongside now the Prince of Wales, His Majesty the King, and, the late Queen Mother. Let me explain. You see, Laurie told me this story, and I just thought this was brilliant because one day he received a call from Buckingham Palace requesting his services to come along to the palace to play the piano for Princess Margaret and the Queen. And he said, what music would you like me to, bring? They said, oh, no, don't worry about that. Just come along. So he popped along. Now, what emerged was this. You see, he wasn't there to sort of just play background music. He was there to actually accompany the Queen and Princess Margaret. They decided to put together for the Queen Mother, their mother's 90th birthday, a collection of nursery rhymes that they'd all sung together as children as a surprise for her. Now, apparently, according to Laurie, after a bit of umming and ahhing, they found the key. But he honestly was, quite blunt and said both sisters had very strong and in-tune voices. There was not really much that he had to tell them. Now, that all went quite swimmingly, there was no problems doing it. Apparently, at the end of it, there was just a sound engineer and a guy setting up the mics. Now, at the end of it, they said, well, let's have a listen back to see what it looks like and sounds like, But nobody could find the stereo. Right? So they're in the Queen Mother's apartments now at Clarence House. Nobody can track it down. Nobody knows really what it looks like. So they ended up going out into the car park area because Princess Margaret's car had a cassette player. So Laurie, the Queen, Princess Margaret, and then Prince Charles, as he then was, came out and said, what are you doing? And they're all crouched around this car door listening to said tape. And he said he did think it was, slightly surreal because suddenly everybody's, he said, I'm the only one that knew how to work the cassette recorder. You just couldn't make this stuff up, could you? So eventually he got it going and they're all sitting there. They were very pleased with it and everything like that. And he then received a wonderful gift and some flowers for his wife and a wonderful letter of thanks from everybody concerned. That's not really the end of the story because a couple of years later, the Queen got in touch with Laurie and said, did you have a copy of the tape? And he said, no, ma'am, I was told I wasn't allowed to take a copy. And the two copies that you have, I know you had one and perhaps the sound man. Now, here's where it gets interesting because After we'd met, we went back to the palace to see if we could find this said tape. Was it in some sort of like Royal Collection Trust, all that sort of stuff? It's nowhere to be seen. Now, I find this incredible to think that this simply isn't a copy, basically saved for prosperity in given what they've done. And apparently there's not. Now, I ask anybody else out there, nobody knows about this because it was a private event. But somebody in the palace must have come across this because it does exist, and he said he was very proud of it, as was the Queen and Princess Margaret. And that truly is the story of the missing cassette tape, because one day there they all were standing around a microphone singing beautifully, all in anticipation. And yes, the Queen Mother absolutely was moved to tears, loved it, thought it was terrific. But now nobody seems to know where that tape is. It must be in the Royal Archives somewhere. Maybe I should write to King Charles, see if he knows. What do you think? Always lovely to share these inside stories with you. And more importantly, if you don't mind, there's a lot of stories that I've now been able to relocate, all thanks to the brilliant Laurie Holloway. And I'd like to share them with you in the fullness of time. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.